it's good to be with you. And as I listened to the workshop that just completed, the process that you have, the process as it flows, as it's structured and organized, fits perfectly in this model that we want to overlay on top of this to show the value of what you do right through the impact and the ROI. So the question we have is this a credible process? Can we give you the true ROI? And of course the answer is going to be yes. But you've got to make that conclusion at the end. So what we'll do is work through some issues here, explaining why is this an issue, why is it facing so many other types of projects and processes and professions, and how do we connect to the business? It's refreshing to see at the very start and the very foundation of your process is get to the business drivers. That's the key thing, connect to the business, and we'll do that. And we'll think about multiple levels of evaluation. We'll have 6 levels of outcome, 5 levels plus intangibles. 6 total, 5 levels of outcomes. You see, if you just think about any project, any program that you could implement, any system, any procedure, doesn't matter, you've got a logical flow of data. And here it is. We're going to see this all over your documents. It's in your workbook. I'll go to your workbook in a minute and show you some details. But it's basically this process. First, there's input. That's who's involved in it, how long they're involved in it, and the cost of their involvement. Inputs to our processes. But then all of your work as super users, you have people who are reacting to what you're doing. Do they see value in what you're doing? It is important to their success. Is it something they will actually use or follow? That reaction is so critical. Have we seen projects break down because they didn't want it? They didn't see a need for it. They didn't like it. They liked their way better. Yes. We work with a lot of IT groups. And they say, that might be the number one reason that so much software is rejected. They just don't see it. They don't need it, don't want it. I feel it. You see, Apple keeps telling me they want to update my software on my iPad. And I keep telling them, no, I don't want you to. I'm okay. I'm good. But they keep telling me, they told me they're going to do it anyway after I rejected it so many times. But then they put the conditions out there, and I disagree with those conditions. So they back off for a couple of weeks, and they come back. We need to upgrade your software. So we got a game we've been playing for almost a year now. See, I don't see a need for it. The last time they've upgraded, it took me a long time to sort it out. I'm okay. So we got to overcome that kind of reaction there. And now, learning. Hey, we have to learn something. We have to take away something from the process. As you work with your clients, they're learning something from you. That's probably a big part of it. You see, if they don't learn from you, you have no value. Learning is so critical. Have you seen technology break down because people didn't know what to do? Yeah, we put it out there sometimes, not the enterprise-wide systems, but smaller systems. We put it out there, often with a little user guide and maybe a help desk. And we build it user-friendly anyway. And there's a tutorial for them to go through if they like. And we just assume they're going to go learn how to use it. And it doesn't. So we've got to know if they've learned. The learning is so critical. But here is even the biggest challenge, getting them to do what we want them to do. Right. The user, as you work with your key clients, the people you're supporting, your challenge is to get them to do what you are showing them how to do. Get them to systematically, routinely do it. Hey, that's what we have to. And we have so many barriers. They don't have time for it. They like their way better. This looks too complicated. No one's asking for this. My manager doesn't support this. Barriers that get in the way. But we got to get that. That's doing something that we need them to do. And then there's a corresponding impact, consequence. They get their work done quicker, less time, maybe get more things done, maybe productivity, better quality. They're keeping people satisfied. That's the value that we ultimately deliver. Impacts. Now, we could take that impact, if we converted that to money, if we first sorted out the effects of what we do, see, the critical issues are going to be sort out what the super users do from everything else that's out there trying to drive the same thing. We sort out what we've done, we convert that to money, we can compare it to the cost of what we're doing, cost of this process, that's our financial ROI. But when we dabble with ROI, we better be following the ROI process that the Chief Financial Officer is using. Got to. You see, we got to make it credible. When you're messing in this level, you got to make it credible. So we designed this process, and it had its beginnings in the 70s in our first study at Lockheed. It has to be user-friendly. That is, when you use this system that we're teaching you today, you've got to see it as easy to use. It's a systematic flow of data. That would be your assessment at the end, we hope. It's easy to do. Then it has to be CEO, CFO friendly. They got to buy into this. If you put an ROI calculation in front of a chief financial officer and they don't believe it, they won't buy into it, they reject it, we're wasting our time. It's got to be so well, so good that they support it. So we've got to take care of the needs of that CFO. And we don't like those people, do we? Oh, I'm sorry, we do. You learn. Ouch. See, we do love them, but so many people say, I don't like those people. They cut my budget. They send the auditors over sometime to audit what we do. We don't like any of this. We wrote this book about 11 years ago now. It's called Show Me the Money. And that was a typical reaction that we thought we'd get there, that Tony had. We sent this to all the Fortune 500 CEOs and all the Fortune 500 CFOs. And they sent us some notes back. They said, we love this book. See, it's called Show Me the Money. Now, we think they love the cover of the book, the title of the book. I don't think they read it. See, the subtitle is How to Determine ROI in People, Projects, and Programs. A step-by-step guide to forecasting and measuring 6 types of data. Unfortunately, some of those executives went down to public relations, for example, and one, like in Qualcomm, a very large technology company, the CEO went to the public relations staff, 45 people in the staff, and says, look, you got 45 people here, and when I ask you, how do you connect to the business? You tell me how many press releases, how many times we're quoted in magazines, how many times we're being interviewed, how many times we have our briefing papers out there. You tell me, but I don't see any connection to our share price. It's time that we do. I need to see the money. And that led to me working with those 45 people. It's like the Grim Reaper showing up, saying, okay, I'm here to help you show the value of what we do. And they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to do it, but they did. And we took them through this and worked with them. 6 months later, we got 2 studies sent to us and says, these are 2 studies where we connected our work to the share price of the company. And now we're getting the respect that we need. Thank you for making us do it. Well, I didn't make them do that. The CEO made them do that. But the point is, we've got to make sure that we can have data that's going to support the executives. They can get them to buy into it and believe it. That's a critical issue these days. The third group that we work with to make sure we support is professional evaluators, the researchers. We call them the professors sometimes. You see, if you've got a process, a model that's rejected by the academic community, for example, you won't go very far with this. Eventually, they'll kill it. Even if it works, sometimes they'll kill it. So you got to get that group involved, and we have, and we did. In the USA now, we have 70 universities who are using our books as a graduate or as a master's or Ph.D. level course. That's our best endorsement of the professors. It has to be a reliable, valid approach. It has to be based on sound foundational principles. You see, this logic model, ironically, has been around for a long time. We trace it back to John Quincy Adams. You remember John Quincy? Not quite that old, are we? He was our president way back. He made a statement about leadership that really caught on, and people quote it all over the world. It says, for leaders, it says, good leaders inspire people. That's reaction. To learn more, learning, and do more, application, and become more. And we'll add to John Quincy's process one more level. And if today he'd probably say this, and it has to be worth the journey. Worth the journey. That's the ROI. Is it worth it for the follower? Is it worth it for the leader? See, a lot of your projects, someone's asking, is it worth it? Is it worth the journey for us to go down this path of using super users? Is it worth the journey? The ROI is our way of calculating that and showing that. We have to be credible, and we do that. So we'll be working through this process. You got with you a workbook. We'll work through the workbook. We have exercises, activities, details here. If we don't get to everything here, you've got some homework that you can do at night when you're lonesome and bored. Now, you've got, with this, you know, I brought some books here. You're welcome to take some with you. I just brought or sent just a few examples. Some books get as thick as 500 pages. Can you imagine that? Who wants to read a 500-page on? No. It's a reference book. Now, could you read a 150-page book, maybe? Maybe. This one won an award from an international group. Best book of the year from that particular group, association, International Society for Performance Improvement. But we think it won the award because it's thin. It's a thin book on ROI, not a thick one. It's called The Bottom Line on ROI. But you don't need that necessarily. You see, you remember in the university when the book was assigned to read and we didn't want to read it, you remember what we did? Cliff Notes, okay? So here's your Cliff Notes version. You see? 32 pages. Now we're getting where we need to be. That sounds reasonable. But these days, some of you, I could see Rachel thinking, said, 32 pages is still a lot of stuff, Jack. Can we have something a little simpler? Well, yes. What we can do is put it all in a fold-out model. So you've got this. This is our process now in a fold-out model, suitable for framing. We've got extra copies for framing. Hey, you can laminate these for your dining room table. Hey, these, and think about the gift-giving season coming. They make great stocking stuffers. We got enough here for that. So you look at this and you say, well, I like that, Jack, but that just doesn't fit my smartphone. So now we got the version that will. And so we go to this page, page 13. Page 13 will fit your smartphone. So you can always look at it. So this is what I've written over here. This is a quick version of this, just to getting the framework in place. We'll be working through this for the next 4 hours as we work through this process. So you've got the process, the materials, more books if you need them. Let Let's go back to the objectives and complete that. As you work through these levels, we'll be looking at the multiple levels of objectives. That is, we want to have an objective for reaction, something you probably haven't done. Set an objective, how you want the people you're working with to react to what you're doing. Objectives around learning, you probably have those. But also objectives on how they will use what you've learned, and also an objective around the impact. And if you want to calculate the ROI, we'll have an objective for ROI. So setting the objectives at the multiple levels is something we'll be doing. And then we'll show you how do you evaluate this all the way through. Following this process, step by step, going through all of the parts, we want to show you how it works here. All the way through impact and maybe ROI. And we want you to leave here by using this process and build support for it. Plan maybe to evaluate a project all the way through to ROI. But it causes you to change your way you're working sometimes. And I think you're already doing that. Because you can see what's going on here. This is saying how the data flows, but the data has to start with the end in mind. It's got to start with the business need. And this is why, when you look at the fold-out model, the very first step, and it connects so well to your model you described this morning, start with why. Align your program to the business. Align your project to the business. Align what you do to the business. And as we'll see, what the data that our sponsor, the key thing that came out today was your executive sponsor, they want to see the business impact. They don't get excited about reaction. You can say, hey, they love working with us. They don't care. And if you say, they're learning a lot from us, they don't care. They're doing a lot from us, they care a little, not so much. But they say, it's driving these impacts. We're adding this value to your bottom line. Now you got their attention. That's what they want to see. So we've got to get there. But we start with the end in mind if we want that end at the end. And so that would be the process that we follow, and making sure we change our way as we go through the process. Now, I know you're getting pressure, you're getting that question, that dreaded ROI question. We see it in places that we would never thought we'd see it, but it's occurring. I want to tell you a story, and it really relates to why we're here. And this is a group of people that we assembled at a university. I should say someone else assembled them for us for a whole week, 57 people. And they were there to learn how to show the value of what they do. So that's not unusual because that's what we do. Patty is my spouse and co-founder of the Institute 25 years ago. We were there to conduct this session for a week. So that's not unusual, but what's unusual is the job of the people who are there, the chaplains. They manage chaplaincy groups. The director of spiritual care, director of chaplaincy in hospital systems. They all manage chaplains in healthcare systems. They were there because the big healthcare systems have said, I'm sorry, but we can't continue to support you unless you can show the business value for what you do. The HCA, the largest private hospital chain, had cut out half of the chaplains and says, we'll cut out the rest unless you can show us the value. And this was organized by the United Methodist Church because they were the endorsing agency for many of these chaplains in the room. We also had chaplains there from other denominations as well. Now, in Patty and I, when we started prepping for this 5-day session with these individuals, we expect them to be complaining in a nice way because they're chaplains and they would be nice, you know. But we thought they would say, why has it come down to this? Why can't we take for granted spiritual care adds value? Why do we have to show the bottom line here? Why do we have to connect everything to money? But we didn't hear that. We prepared for it. What we heard was, hey, we know we make a difference. We see it every day. We just don't have the data. We know that good spiritual care will affect patient outcomes. We know that we reduce the length of stay. We get people out of the system quicker because we work with them, make sure they follow the protocol, the processes. And length of stay is one of the important financial measures because if you exceed the length of stay that's reimbursable, the hospital has to absorb that. I get you out early, I'm saving money. Also, we prevent unnecessary readmissions. You see, that's when you come back when you shouldn't have. He says, we work with them and keep that from occurring. And that's money that we're avoiding there because it's not reimbursed. And we help patient satisfaction. We work with the families and with the patients. We make sure they see they've got great care. So when they do their patient satisfaction ratings, as a follow-up, they give good ratings. And part of the reimbursement in the healthcare system in this country is connected to patient satisfaction. It's money. And staff, the staff turnover, we have an effect on that. It says we meet with staff at the end of a day of trauma and drama. They come to us and they say, it's so comforting to be able to sit and talk through some things with you. Thank you for being here. You're part of the reason why we're still here. We know we make a difference. You see, they knew they're making a difference. They didn't have the data. But their big issue here is being able to sort out the effects that they have from other processes. You see, you'll see this block in our process. How many of you have memorized these 12 steps already? Not quite yet. You see, number 6, make it credible. Isolate the effects of the program. That is, sort out the effects of what we do. Now, I want to show you in your workbook some data from one of these chaplains. Now, I should say we worked with those 57. They came, we said, if you want to go down this journey, we're going to work with you till we get studies done. 26 more continued with us in another meeting, and they're doing studies, and they're turning them into us, ROI studies. One of those studies has won an award from our institute as one of the most innovative studies we've seen. But I want to show you another one here. I just want to show you that issue that we talked about. So it's isolating the effects of our program. So we'll go to page 46. Page 46. So one of these studies with these chaplains was in a mental hospital setting in California. In the mental hospitals, as you can imagine, sometimes the patients get irritated with certain procedures they go through with the patient, and they take that irritation out on the nearest person around, and it's often the staff. And they cause injury to the staff. Sometimes it's a bruise, sometimes it's a broken arm. In extreme cases, it's been a fatality, where a patient kills a staff member. Isn't that horrible? So, they said, we've never inserted chaplains into this, so let's give it a try. So working with them, we matched up 2 different groups in terms of the diagnosis of the patient, the size of the patient, the flow of the length of stay, and all of those things that we could use to have our best possible matching that we could do. 2 groups. One group got the chaplains, and the other group did not. You see, this group did not get the chaplains. This group had the chaplains. Now, if those groups are matched up, and nothing else occurred in one group that didn't occur in the other during the experiment. This is classic research data showing the impact of chaplaincy. When you look at the difference here, in employee assaults from the experimental group and here. See, that's the proof that chaplains needed, that we make a difference. So when we now have those studies coming in, we've got a publisher committed to publishing a book on measuring the ROI on chaplaincy. Can you believe that? We never thought we'd see that, but we are. And I tell that story because, look, if the chaplains can do it, you can do it. It's as simple as that. And if you ever say, oh, this is too hard, I don't want to do this, why should I have to do this, I hate the CFO, I hate ROI, I hate everything. Just think about the attitude of these chaplains, just a marvelous group of people to work with. They're doing it. I hadn't heard of a complaint yet. And this person who won our award put the chaplains in the intensive care unit where they didn't normally put chaplains. I guess they figured it's too late for these people or something, I don't know. But they tried to experiment, and he matched it up quite well, and they reduced the length of stay when you compared the two groups. Significant reduction of the length of stay where they had the chaplains. And they put them, it's very expensive for every day in the intensive care unit. So quite dramatic in terms of the money saving compared to the cost of this chaplain. He turned that into a study with us, but he also gave it to his hospital administrator. This person was a manager of chaplaincy for the hospital system, which covered several hospitals. They said, this is the kind of data we need. Thank you for doing this. I don't think we'll have any problem funding our chaplains when you show me this kind of data.
What did they actually do? What was their role when they were there? What was their role?
Well, they work with the patient. They work with they look at their protocol. They're there for comfort to the patient, helping the patient, making sure they follow what they're supposed to be doing, just making them at ease and at peace as you go through the process. So it's whatever they do as chaplains, kind of like whatever you do as a super user, things that you do to make sure that the team is working, they're communicating, they're collaborating, and all of that. They're doing in their chaplain speak the things that they have worked.
What was their role, or what was their ratio in terms of chaplain to patient?
It's low. I mean, that means it's one chaplain for several patients. It's not one-on-one. It's too expensive for that, and you don't really need one-on-one. We can actually show you the case study here in this case if you'd like. And we got others coming in. The point I'm making is that if you think about chaplains, someone once told me when we started thinking about super users, that a super user is a combination of an on-the-job trainer, a coach, counselor, and a chaplain. Is that right? Is that the way it is, probably? So if you look at the bottom of the next page, this explains, I say bottom, let's go back to page 2 just for a minute. And I'd like to look at the bottom of the page 2. You've got some propaganda there on that page. When I met Ginger, here's who we have people in coaching already through this process. We have books published on coaching with actual ROI studies on coaching. There's a couple of copies of this book here if you'd like. It's mostly a case study book, but it's also how do you do it. Counseling, we've got a study in your workbook on counseling. If counselors can show the ROI, then the chaplains got interested in us because of the coaching and counseling. They said if it works there, it probably works with a chaplain. But notice that next group, OwnBuds. You ever heard of OwnBuds? Yes. OwnBuds says if it works for the chaplains, then I think it should work for us. And now we've got just last month, we had our third group of ombuds going through this. It was organized and sponsored by FEMA in Washington, the Ombuds office in FEMA. We've had also the Ombuds office at the international headquarters, the Red Cross in DC, also hosting one of these sessions. So my point is, Ombuds are now doing it. So Gendra tells me, if it works with all of these groups, it's going to work with the super users. So we're here because we're making great strides. Even here, Diego, as we mentioned, he's already completed his first super user ROI study, and it's actually in your workbook. We'll talk about that. I'd like to talk through some examples in maybe coaching and counseling, and then end up with Diego's study for super users as for applications. But we want to work through some examples of what we mean by these different steps in the process. Questions?
For the chaplains, did this process start with them building their ROI and then trying to sell it, or was it requested of them from the top down?
It's requested from the top down at first, in a very dramatic way, and it's usually a reduction in chaplains. When it comes budget time, he says, I'm sorry, we can only fund these many chaplains. And they said, why? Chaplains are needed. They said, well, you need to show us the value of this if we can continue. So it started from there. And unfortunately, in almost all of these areas, it starts with someone questioning their value. And that's what gets them into it. But their attitude was marvelous. It could, when that's pushed on you and forced into your system, do it or else, you tend to have a not so good attitude about this. But their attitude was marvelous, because you can imagine as a chaplain, it's probably the way you feel sometimes. You know you're making a difference. You see it with the people you're working with. You just don't have the data to show it. And that's the way they felt. So yes, it started from the top down. They're doing it now. They put that data back up to keep my budget, improve my budget. Getting to the point where we got an email this week from a person who says, we're adding chaplains to the hospital, but my hospital administrator says, if you're going to add 12 more chaplains, I need to see the ROI for these 12 chaplains before we put them in place. So can you help us with that? And we said, certainly. That's called forecasting. So we forecast in advance the value of chaplaincy. And forecasting is now an important part of our process here, as you look at this methodology. So that's the journey. And let's look at what happens to us. And if you can bear with me, I'd like to use coaching as an example first, and then a little bit about counseling, and then we want to go later to a super user case study. But let's get coaching. And we've got a dialogue that took place in the actual organization. You'll see this on page 3. This is the World Bank in Washington. We work with the United Nations and a lot of different, 17 of their agencies. The World Bank is one of those. So on this page is a request that I got. When just a few years ago, the World Bank hired a new president. He just recently left a little earlier than his term, and they've just added a new one. But this other president, as he came into the World Bank, started looking at cost. And when you look at cost, sometimes a cost item gets your attention. What he noticed was a line item of executive coaching. Huge number. So he goes to the chief talent officer. So tell me about this huge cost for executive coaching. I'm a little interested in that. She says, well, it's huge here. It's 85 coaches coaching 440 executives. And it's a very expensive coaching firm, the best in the world. That's why it's so expensive. What do you think was his next question? Yeah. So I want you to read the story and the dialogue that took place. They called us, so we're the consultants in this process. So take a few minutes, but look at the outcome of what happened here. So you think this is a typical situation? Don't you hate that word, pause? Let's put it on pause for a few minutes. You see, the program was successful at level 3. Lots of great data there about more how they use the coach to work with their team, very specifics. But the best we could do with impacts was the classic intangibles like collaboration, better communication, better teamwork. And the reason is it didn't start with a business measure. Maybe I'm answering a question. I shouldn't say this. Number 2 question. One thing was we didn't start with the end in mind. Could you see some other things that went wrong here?
It was very general in what they wanted for their approach, but there was nothing specific they wanted to target as far as that they could show the, as mentioned, the key performance indicators,
Yes.
the value.
Yes. You see, I think it's good coaching, but as you suggested this morning, you really got to start with those business issues, the business conditions, and it didn't. See, some of these were transition kind of coaching. Sometimes it's dealing with HR issues. It's helping them through some issues. Not much connected to the business. Wasn't designed to. And I'm suggesting you probably didn't need to. But when you got a program that gets very expensive, gets very high profile, and involves a lot of people, you can expect these days someone's going to be asking, so what's the value of this? So we just got to anticipate that. This could be one of those that we need to be or to do. You see, we wanted to meet, when we do an ROI study for a client, we always request that we meet with the top executives or whoever's wanting this data, usually the top executives. Because we want to clearly make sure they understand not only the results, but the methodology that was used to get to the results. And that's what we had here. And we wanted to explain why in our report we stopped at level 4, intangible, and didn't go to level 5, ROI. And it's because it wasn't designed to. It could be if you want it to, but maybe you don't want it to. So we'd want to talk through this program and say, are you okay with the way it's going? Some good data here. It may be. But if you want to connect it to business, here's what we need to do. You start with the business need. You have each person identify specific business measures they want to improve. And the coaching is the way to get there. Just like on the super users, start with a business issue and say, this is a way to get to this. Let's make sure that we can drive those business issues. Yeah.
So you said that with Jack, the sort of the process of coming up with ROI was requested from the top down.
Right.
So in that case, you already had a business driver, and that is, the cost of having these chapters, right, that we needed. So there was a measurable that they wanted to get an answer. But in this coaching page, some of these outcomes, which might be, I'll call it mindfulness, like the soft outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
important, wouldn't necessarily start with the business thinking about that at all, right? Like, unless they're getting to the point where they're trying to cut costs. So is there other factors out there that could help translate some of these soft values?
Let's do that now. See, the business driver from the hospitals to the chaplain wasn't, I should say, you got the cost, but the cost is only one side of the calculation. I want to take you to, I'm going to jump into page 22 for a minute and show you what we'll be calculating here in a few minutes or this afternoon. Down at the bottom of page 22, this is in your Cliff Notes version. So in 22, we've got the BCR, the benefit cost ratio, the ROI, which is a business term in organizations, and payback period, and that's how long it takes me to get my money back. Now notice, the BCR is benefits divided by cost.
Are you in this book?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Application
I
guide.
was like looking and I'm like, I'm in pay off opportunities. Wrong book. Sorry.
I'm sorry. This is Java.
He called this the Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes. Application guide is the more formal name for this. Yes. Okay. You see, 22, classic ways, benefit cost ratio. That's one thing we'll do for all of our projects if you want to go to ROI. Benefits divided by costs. Classic, that's been around for centuries. We trace it back to the 2nd century AD. It has a long history, comes out of governments. Now, the ROI is more of a recent term. It's only 400 years old. It comes from the Dutch. They started doing it about 400 years ago, but it really became dominant in this country a little over 100 years ago. Very young. And it's actually taking the same two numbers, but you got benefits minus the cost. So that's the net. That's how much we made off of this. We spent this much money, $222,000, and avoided $436,000. See, that's what you're doing here, is you spend money as a super user. That's a cost, but you're avoiding some cost in the system. You save time, quality, productivity. Those are big costs out there that you're avoiding. And you got some others that we'll talk about. So that's earnings, that's benefits minus costs, that's how much we earned, how much did we make. That's our net divided by the cost times 100. That let us put a percent on that. So when we say 96%, that says for every $1 we invest, we get our dollar back plus 96 cents. That's a pretty good investment. Compare that to your local bank where you put your money in savings, you get it back plus maybe 2%. Now, those are the two main calculations. We require all of our clients to use both of those calculations just to make sure you don't get those two confused. Now, let's go back to Tony's point. See, in the hospital, they clearly could see the cost of the chaplains, had no idea what the benefits were. So this is what causes. The coaching, the same thing. They had in front of this executive was the cost of coaching. I have no idea what the benefits are. And that's what happens to us. They can see the cost of what we're doing. They need benefits. Now, we'll show you the process of getting there. How do we get to the benefits? The chaplains already knew. Remember, they said, look, we influence measures like patient outcomes, length of stay, readmissions, patient satisfaction, staff turnover. They knew it already. They just don't have any data to show it. Now, in this coaching example, it didn't start with that. It says, I think I need a coach. Okay, let's get a good coach. Didn't start with a business need. I'd like to contrast this with the next study, which is now Hilton Hotel Chain. So go back to your workbook. Go to the next study and let's contrast the difference here. Again, the real name is Hilton. And let's look at the difference and see how we could tackle this. This is going to be on page 6 in your workbook now. This is a workbook, page 6 and 7. And look at the question at the bottom of page 7. So what made this successful? Again, with the end in mind. What else? The end being a business need. Anything else you can see? Yes. See, you need the focus. You need objectives, the different levels, and they have them. What else? I'm sorry?
Set up measurable objectives?
Yes. Very measurable objectives, actually at all levels, but particularly at level 4. And there's a very subtle thing going on that says they change the engagement process. A coaching engagement typically works with behavior. You want a coach to change the way you're working with your team. If that's the beginning, that's behavior, then the end would have to be behavior. But here they wanted the end to be business. So they had to make sure that coaching could affect the business measure. So they started off with, you see these 5 measures that we have, 5 categories of measures. That's the impacts: sales growth, productivity, operational efficiency, direct cost reduction, retention of key staff, customer satisfaction. That would be almost any organization these days. What the executives say, these are the things you need to be working on. And it says, for this coaching program, we want you to show us your improvement in 3 measures in these categories. You decide what's important to you. See, that's letting them decide what's really in your world something you need to change. But they had to make this extra effort. Let's make sure it's a measure you can change with your team using your coach, that your coach can make a difference here. If the coach can't make the difference, then we can't improve it. That's connecting the business measure now to our solution, what we do, the coaching. So what we've done here, clearly, is the first 3 blocks of this model. In the Hilton example, you align to the business to begin with. Everybody's got 3 measures now. Make sure that this is the right solution to get there. So you imagine when Rob and Ginger says, we start with the business drivers. What's driving you? And we got to make sure that what we can do, what we deliver, can improve those measures. That connects us as a solution to the business issue. Very important, because that's step 2, make it feasible. Select the right solution. And make sure we have an opportunity to improve that. Have you ever heard of anyone implementing the wrong solution? I know not us. Somewhere we've heard stories of that. See, this is making sure that our solution is the right solution to do it, or at least part of the solution. But then, as Tasha says, we've got that focus we need. Expect success. And there are 3 things we do with expect success. It says plan for results. 3 things. One is that we define success of our program now. Ultimate success is at the business level. That's where we want to take it. And second, we give good definitions to everyone involved through those objectives. So we set objectives at 4 levels. And you see that clearly listed there. And third, the people who are making it happen now, all the stakeholders, have all those objectives. So they clearly see what we as a whole team have to meet, what we have to do. So we design for it. We put tools, with templates, so processes in place, documents in place, all aimed at the ultimate success for level 3, level 4, application impact. what we're doing with those three blocks is making sure that we have success at the end. These are in red. Why do you think they're in red? Because I got my Ph.D. at the University of Alabama and we're the crimson. I'm sorry. We won't go there. Now, we put it in red because that's often not done very well. You can see it wasn't done at all in the World Bank example. It was in Hilton. And I'd be the first to say those objectives you see in that Hilton study for coaching would be rare. And they're there because they they wanted to see the impact in ROI in the end. And you got to do it now. You got to have that kind of focus. So not every project deserves ROI. Your project might not deserve ROI, but if it does, or if it's requested, we need to set it up properly. And you set it up with those first three blocks. Yes?
I have a question. Comparing what they did here with the original case study in coaching, isn't it almost a matter of causality? Because you could almost make the case that even in that first coaching study, there might have been a retention of the staff because they like being part of the
Yes.
program. There might have been an increase in customer satisfaction and some of these other measures, but you couldn't establish the cause and effect between the two.
Right.
It's not to say that you call them intangibles because
Yeah.
you couldn't draw the connection, but it's very possible that there were impact objectives being met, but there was no way to connect the two.
Yes. It's a good point. See, it could be, in the first example, that we did improve the retention of key staff, but it never was my goal to do that because it wasn't an objective. That's not why I'm doing this. And so when you ask the person, so what impacts came from your coaching, they had nothing to say because they're not thinking the key staff is related. And so that's a very good point. It could be there already. But there's another point. It's a good chance it's not there to the level, even if it's there, that we have. If you want results, you have to plan for the results, design for the results, and that enhances your results. We want to bring in some concepts from setting objectives that's we developed since the 1960s about the power of goal setting. And what we know is if you have no objectives, you still may get some performance. You could, as a super user, set no objectives at all and you're going to get some results. But if you have a very vague objectives, you'll probably get more than you would if you didn't have an objective. If you have a very specific objective, so you want to improve this measure by this amount, by this time, you get even more performance. And if you have a stretch objective, you even get more performance. So we're going to take that power and say, look, not only are we know what measure to go to, but we're probably influencing with our process because we're designing for it. And so sometimes by putting these tools and templates in place, everybody's focusing on results. We get this question sometimes. It says, is it possible that the process you're using is driving some results just because you've got all of these processes in place? We say yes, and we want that. Are you okay with that? They think so. Well, yeah, I guess so. What that tells us is maybe we should design for results every time. Put those tools and templates in place every time. So we don't walk away from that. When you use an action plan to drive the measure that we want, and that's what's in the Hilton case study. And that case study, we'd be happy to send to you if you'd like. And it's in the coaching case study book. That action plan actually drives some performance. We know that. It's a tool that we put in place to get to that. But we're not embarrassed with that. We say we're all trying to get the results. But we as super users, we as coaches, we as whoever are putting that in place purposely to drive the results. So we're really proud of it and not walking away from it. Yes.
Yeah, and to your point, I feel like reflecting back on the case study that
it was more one-on-one dependent, the coach to the person, because they didn't have an established agenda against which they were working with desired outcomes or planned outcomes. And so that would make it non-repeatable in my book, which means that if you got that outcome of talent retention, was the talent retention tied to something else that you're not measuring? You see what I'm saying? So that's what came to mind for me.
Yes, you're more than likely, because you're designed for it, it's logical to say that was your objective, you worked on it, and you achieved it. So yeah, that helps the even executive see the connection between what you're doing. But we still take that extra step to sort it out. Just because we got it now, we don't really, we can't necessarily say that it's caused by what we've done. In yesterday's Wall Street Journal, there's an interesting case from Utah. Utah has run some ads for tourism, and they've ran ads to get people to go to 5 very important parks there in Utah. And what's happened is that they were so good that there are too many tourists now. And they're having to build some stuff to take care of the tourists, and people are complaining because there's long lines and they can't get in. And so that was too successful. But see, you got to plan. Here's where forecasting could have helped us. And so we could see that good news coming through and anticipate that and say, do we really want that many? Maybe we don't need to run those ads so many places. And so at the end, even they say, we don't, maybe something else has caused this, but we don't know. It looks like it all came from those ads. To me, that doesn't sound good. As a marketing person, you'd want to say, yes, there's some just general things that are happening in the economy, things are turning around. A lot of people are staying in this country, not going outside USA for their vacations. Those two alone could account for some of that. So you want to always sort out the effects of what you've done just to see what you've accomplished in your work.
Just to mind something for me, so right now we've got so much going on in robotics, process automation, and artificial intelligence, and the impact on business process automation. And so if you are building an ROI, that story you just talked about made me think about that. If we're building an ROI to show the benefit of something that we're putting in place, are we thinking about all of the possible outcomes, not just our plan, here's the target outcome we want, what do we get less, and what do we get more? If we get more, do we have the organizational plan to deal with that?
Yeah.
And in that case, do we have the infrastructure or people or whatever to deal with the influx of people?
And forecasting can help you with that. Getting a good forecast can show you what could come out of this.
Not just that too, but what about the technology and processes, the tools that you need to capture those things to have in place. So that's where forecasting too.
Right. Exactly.
You need that control group though. Even in that graph that you have in chat, you see, the control group also,
Yeah.
just not as much.
Yeah.
And so you pointed earlier, like, well, there are other factors that also lead to something. Without the control group, how can someone make the case, well, of course it's going to go down because this other factor.
Yes.
Or having the chart actually look together the direction, which could have been, we both put out, but Jack didn't go up as much.
Yes.
We have to be able to explain that.
Yes.
Well, yes, we still have increased violence, but.
We're going to do that. Control group is only one. So look under this block. And here's what we have. And I want to take you there quickly. What we have is this model. We first have these parts of the model, and I want to get to that isolation. Those are the first 3 blocks that we just talked about. It's so important to get us started on the right direction. But then we have to make it matter to the people involved in it. That's reaction and learning. If it doesn't matter to them, they won't use it. That's level 1 and level 2. And then level 3 and level 4, you want them to routinely, systematically be doing what they're learning from you, putting this in place, following the steps always, using this tool every time. You want them to be doing it. Here we're trying to make it stick. Make it stick. It's level 3 and 4. That's why we call it make it stick. By make it stick, that means it's there every time. It's systematic, routine. But then, after we have the impact there, at the bottom there, level 4, that gets us to impact, we isolate the effects of our program. Now, notice, you got a list of some of the techniques there. The one it listed at the top is our best one, experimental versus control group. But there's some others there. We're going to always do that. We're going to always do that because that's the only way you can be credible. And we emphasize this in 3 different ways. One, we put it in the definition of our methodology here. You notice on the cover sheet here, which is the most user-friendly part of this, the cover. At the cover here, it says, here's the kind of data that we collect, but this balanced approach to measurement includes a step to isolate the effects of the program. So we put it in the definition so you don't miss that. But then the process. You notice you don't have an arrow that goes around this step. You got to go through this. So we're telling you about process here, you've got to do it. But here's a very critical part, and it's the standards for this. You've got standards for any process. We have standards for this. If you look at the back part, the guiding principles here, if you fold the flap back, the guiding principles. Look at number 5. You got always do this. You can do this. You can always do it. The worst case scenario, the default position is that I get the most credible people to sort it out. It's people who are unbiased. You don't stand in front of your client and say, now, you got this improvement. That's a fact. How much you think that we contributed to that? The answer would be biased because you're standing there in front of them. Are you collecting the data? So we want the data collected in an unbiased, non-threatening way. It's someone who understands the factors that could have caused this, and they're sorting it out. But because we're using estimates, we go to guiding principle number 7. You see number 7. We're going to even take the error out of that estimate. We'll talk about this afternoon. That's near the end of the session. How do we get to there? So getting back to Rob's point here, you got to always do that to be credible. We know we have almost 6,000 users. I should say 6,000 certified ROI professionals. Diego's the most recent one. It was just awarded yesterday. And we want to give that to him virtually today, but we're going to send it to him later. That means almost 6,000 people have done this step. You don't do that step, you don't become a certified ROI professional. So we've got this certification that we've had since 1995. About 14,000 people have been through that. We've got almost 6,000 now certified. We got lots of people working on studies now, so it's about a 50% rate of people who go down the path who actually get there. So you've got to do this. You've got to follow the standards so you don't get certified. So that's a critical part of the process. Just to round it off before lunch, isolating the effects of the program is so critical there. That one. That tells us how much of the impact is connected to what we do. Now we're going to convert that to money. Notice we say make it credible, convert the data to money. It has to be very conservative to be supported by the chief financial officer. Just imagine you're making your presentation. You want to make it so that if the chief financial officer is in your audience, I get the buy-in from this person. If I don't, I'm wasting my time anyway. Now, we put all the cost in. Even if you use a classroom to work with your users as a super user, we want to put the cost of that classroom. You could say, well, the classroom's already there. Why should I put that cost in? But the classroom is there for these kind of meetings and this kind of training. If we didn't do that, it would probably be someone's office. There is a cost to that organization. You want to put it in there. The point we're making is that we put all of the costs, direct and indirect. And when you do that, you're credible. So we say make it credible, put the cost, all of the cost in the cost of our work. And now you calculate ROI. We make it credible by using the same calculation that the chief financial officer. What we showed you in the application guide on page 22 was an ROI calculation that comes right out of finance and accounting. We don't make up some interesting concept that's going to look great. We use the ROI. When I worked with NASA the first time, we were working with them with their public programs that go out to the school systems. They have almost 500 programs that go out to all kinds of schools from kindergarten right up to universities. And we were surprised when someone said to us, we already have ROI, Jack, so you'll be proud of that. And I said, well, that's interesting. Tell me about this. Well, when we go to the school systems, we're trying to get the kids interested in space. We want to inspire them to go into space or go into technology. So we have a 10-point scale we put in front of them, and that's your inspiration. So we collect that data and report it out. That's our return on inspiration, ROI. And I said, so how would the financial officer relate to this? They said, I don't know, we don't talk to them. You see, ROI, return on inspiration, we don't have that. Not that that's not interesting. See, that's going to be an intangible in our work. It's important. But what's more important is that we can put something in front of that CFO they'll buy into, something out of their world. Then we look at intangibles. So you're going to always have lots of intangibles. They're difficult to convert to money. Stress. I lower the stress. I improve the teamwork. I have more collaboration. I have more cooperation. I have more communications going on. I have whatever, all those good things that we're getting here. And that's going to be intangibles. We'll make it credible by making sure we're connected to that in a credible way. Then we're ready to tell a story. We got a story to tell that's going to involve both numbers and narrative. We got stories to tell, but now with numbers and a framework to classify the stories. So we've got credible data that we can. These stories are going to get you engaged and interesting, and you remember it. The numbers are for those who need the numbers, and that's a lot of people these days, but particularly the executives. And now we use black box thinking there. See, when Rob and Ginger was talking about process improvement, making it better, we do that. So we just think of it this way. You've got black box thinking. We know our black boxes in the airline industry. I'm sure Southwest could tell us a lot about that. And Boeing probably could tell us a lot about that as they've had to ground their planes. You know, the black boxes is a voice data recorder and a system recorder. And when the plane crashes, we know why it crashed because we go in there and find the cause. But that translates into design changes, as it case for Boeing for the 737 MAX, or sometimes procedure change, policy change, training, all those kind of things. So what that has done, the black box thinking in the aviation industry has made airline travel the safest travel in the world. It's also made it so safe that being in an airplane flying is the safest place you can be. My mom would never believe that. But you're 100 times more likely to get killed by lightning on a golf course than die in a plane crash. 100 times more likely to get killed by lightning on a golf course than killed in a plane crash. And so my point is, it's safe because of black box thinking. And there's people been advocating black box thinking for the healthcare industry, and it's not there. It's so far removed from this. And even lately, it's been proposed for cybersecurity. Black box having that same kind of investigation for a major cybersecurity attack. And so why don't we do that? Because we share then with the whole community what caused it and what we need to change. So what we're saying here, let's bring that thinking to our projects, make them better along the way. As we collect data about reaction and learning, make adjustments if we don't have it. An application, make adjustments if we don't have it. And if it turns out negative, we're going to find out, we know what's caused it, so we can go back and change it going forward. So we just want, it's a relentless process. And you can see this chart here. Our evaluation is measuring success. We use that to improve, which is really optimizing the success of our process, and we can make a good case for funding. So the reason we're doing this is to keep good funding stream for the super users. Well, we defined in it. Well, so you can, let's look at intangibles for a minute. You've got on page 20. We define an intangible as a measure that we've decided that we cannot convert to money because we cannot convert it to money credibly with a reasonable amount of time. If we can convert it, it's tangible now. So we'll look at how do you do that converting data to money. But we've seen things like happiness converted to money, networking converted to money, stress converted to money. So if you can do that, you probably can convert almost any intangible to money. But the question is, do I want to do it with my project? If the answer is no, it takes too much time, or I cannot do it credibly, we leave it as an intangible. And the way we connect it to a program is this simple question here. See this question you see on page 20? We got a list of the intangibles, and we ask this question. Please indicate the extent to which this program has influenced the following measures. This is like a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is no influence, 5 is very significant influence. So we're being credible by connecting our program to the intangible and reporting it out. But again, we try to convert it to money first, so it's not intangible. If it's converted to money credibly, it's in the money, it's in the calculation. We'll work on that this afternoon. Let's take a break. Lunch is ready. Okay, let's get started. We've got lots of things to do, things to learn, places to go, people to see. Before we get started, do you have questions about what we covered or what we might cover? Any predictions on the scores in the NFL, college games, Major League Baseball? Yes.
So one question that sort of popped up, not initiated by me, but by as we sort of networking and talking to Regina and finding out how they're doing things. But one thing that showed up for me is that a lot of times we already have a program in place.
Mm-hmm.
You have your super users group at some stage already. So
Yes.
you didn't begin with the end in mind.
Yes. Excuse me. That gets me choked up. See, unfortunately, that's what we run into. Doesn't mean we can't evaluate it. It's just that we didn't connect it very clearly to the business to begin with. So the expectations were not there. We didn't have those nice objectives. We can still go evaluate. What I would suggest is that if you want to show the value of what you do, all the way to impact, maybe even ROI level, I'd say, why don't you go ahead and put them in place? Put those objectives in place. And you can tell the team, say, now it's time for us to have very clear, good objectives. This kind of validates what we're doing and at the same time gives us some directions all the way to the impact. So we don't approach it saying, uh-oh, we should have done that, we didn't, but now we're going to do it. We'd say, this is a good evolution for us. Let's put that in place, and then let's run it for a while, and then go evaluate. That's what I suggested the World Bank do. Instead of evaluating this program, why don't you just make the changes you need now? If you want it to go to the business, make them going forward. And now let's evaluate some of the coaching that's coming through the new assignments, the new coaching. And they say, well, but the president's already asked for this. I think we've got to do it. And I always, if I had to do over with this, I would have said, let's go talk to him. And knowing that what happened here, we put it on pause, and that thing is still on pause. That study was done about 2 years ago. It's still on pause, and he's gone now. Now, just imagine those 85 coaches out there. Never were told what happened. Said it's just been put on pause by the CEO. They don't know why. There were external coaches. Yes. So they wonder what happened. They don't have the full story. But they're only doing what they were asked to do. But they could change. You know, if you need to drive business value, you can adjust and make that engagement to be business. So even if your program's going in place, let's try to tweak it a little bit to have a more focused process before we go evaluate it. Sometimes we want to just see how it's working as it is, because in any evaluation, you learn something to make it better. And the time to do it is when you don't have to do it. When you got that big gorilla looking over you saying, I got to have some data or else, it's too late, really. By the time you get the data you need, and they won't wait that long. Now you're defensive. You really want to be on the offense. And ROI is on that person's agenda, not yours. You want to keep ROI on your agenda if you can. It's a bad place to be. We've seen desperation. I had a call from a learning manager in India just the other day saying, look, I need some help quickly. My CEO told me if I couldn't show the value of our whole learning organization in 3 weeks, he was going to remove the whole budget. And I said, tell me about your department. It's quite large, a lot of things going on. I said, what kind of data you have? He says, well, just like everyone else, we collect reaction and we have some learning data, but that's it. I said, well, I think our best strategy is let's update your resume. Try to find you another job quickly, because I don't think you're going to survive what's about to happen to you. Now, but realistic, I said there's some desperation things that we could do. You know, by taking some of your programs you think they're driving value, just get a little data and say, hey, we know some of these are driving important issues. Now, this is apart from those that are part of governance. You know, you got to have some programs to be in compliance. You can't remove those. It's usually the non-governance programs that come under question, and it's often the soft stuff. And I'll put the super users in the soft categories. You're doing something that's called soft skills. And we hate that term, but that's really what we're doing. But we've got good data. In fact, the biggest database in the world of soft skills programs. And we can show clearly that you get a much higher ROI with soft skills than you do with hard skills. And that's what we got to convince our executives. Now, executives think the world lives and dies with hard skills. STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. But it's to make the most creative organizations, the most innovative organizations, the longest lasting organizations, the most sustainable organizations, the most admired organizations, and the great places where it comes from soft skills, not the hard skills. And if we can show them that, it's the soft stuff that really makes a difference. We are winning the battle as they look at what we do. You see, when they look at what we do, we want to make sure they see us as an investment and not a cost. If they see us as a cost, they're going to control it, freeze it, pause it, do horrible things to it. If they see it as an investment, they might protect it, enhance it, do more of it. The best way to show them if it's an investment is to calculate the ROI. So that's a little longer than you wanted to hear there, I'm sorry. But see, yeah, we can still go forward with one if you didn't start with the end in mind, and build on that. But try to wait if you can to get to see the value until you've got the effects of the changes you want to make in place. Other questions quickly? It's a good reminder to say, why are we doing this? So on your workbook on page 16, we'll just start with this. Here's some reasons to do it. I'd say the number one reason we'd like to be doing this is process improvement. I think that matches what Rob and Ginger were saying. That's the third one on the list. Unfortunately, what's driving ROI in our business globally is the second from the bottom, justifying budgets. When there's uncertainty in the economy, that makes people tighten up the budgets. And we know some organizations with record profits now are trimming some budgets in the soft area, like learning and development, PR, communications, because they want to be lean and mean for whatever's going to happen. I just had a call with my partner in Singapore yesterday, and he tells me that he works in the learning and development space primarily. He says they're cutting learning budgets in Singapore, although we're doing great. Companies are doing great. The organizations are doing great. It's just that they're afraid that Trump is going to put tariffs on Singapore because they put tariffs on all of our goods coming there. We put no tariffs on their goods. They know something's going to happen there. So they're nervous. They cut budgets. So they cut the budgets that are considered a cost. It's really risky if you can't show the value of what you do in today's economy, even here in the States. So we just got to keep going there. So there's a lot of good reasons. One of the reasons we kept doing that is to I didn't make this list, but we wanted to see the value. I was went from engineering over to the learning area and was head of learning to see the value of what we do. I later was head of HR for a Fortune 500 company, head of HR for 8 years, then moved into the banking industry, and that ended up as a bank president. Now, along the way, we were showing the value of our projects and programs. It gave us a good feeling to know that we're making a difference. That's a good reason to do it. Self-satisfaction and the morale and the satisfaction with the team. But there's also a good way to build partnerships, earn the respect, prove the image of the programs, image of what we do. So, what I think we'll do is quickly look at a case study and then start working through these 12 steps, all 12 steps. There's a connection. You've heard of the 12-step program?
Yeah.
That's a connection here. So can you imagine Regina coming up to someone and says, "Hello, my name is Regina. I'm struggling." Regina, I'm struggling with ROI. And we'd say, "Welcome, Regina. We're all struggling with ROI." So it's like a 12-step program. Just kidding, of course. I'd like to go to page 17. Page 17, and just quickly look at this situation. And let's think through how we would do this. It might be helpful if you read this for just a minute, and then we can go from there. Page 17. Page 17, and we'll work through together the questions on page 18. Just see how we might set this up. So let's work together to save a little time here on page 18. So what we have is a situation where this is in Alberta, Canada. This is in Calgary. And in the Alberta province is where the oil is located in Canada. Oil prices went down, so the budget for the province went down, and the government's faced with cutting budgets. And so they go around to all the things they're funding and ask them, can you help us see the value of what they have? And when Sarah asked, what would you like to see? They said, well, how about the ROI? She says, what is that? It's a return on investment. So what is that? So we're investing in this program. What is the province getting out of it? Are we saving some cost? Are we adding some revenue? You see, if someone's getting what's happening for the most part, there could be a lot of things that drive people to come to the food bank and ask for free food. One of them is they don't have a job. That causes that. Or one member of the household doesn't have a job. Or they're underemployed. Of course, it could be things like an addiction of a child, or major health issue, or legal issue, something that's causing me not to have enough money to buy the food, and they're there. So they put the counselor in place to get people back on their feet, so they wouldn't have to ask for free food. So with that situation, then we ask the question number one, you think it's reasonable request for the government to be asking about this? Yeah. If you're going to balance the budget, you've got to cut somewhere. If the costs are down, as distasteful as it may be or feel, we've still got to do it. Now, do you think it's feasible for her to show the ROI? All right, good. Now, let's just walk down this list for a minute. As you look at the outcome levels here, reaction. Now, the reaction we're concerned with most is the people who are doing the counseling, people who are receiving the counseling. How do you want that group of people to perceive the counseling that we're providing? Remember, the counseling is to get them back on their feet, resolve their problem they have. How would you want them to perceive the value of the counseling?
I think one of the things would be like set some objectives, like, for us to continue to provide free food for you, we'd like to be able to follow up and make sure that you're out there actually looking for work while we will try to match maybe your skills with a job market.
Yes. See, that reaction is, I want you to intend to follow what we're concluding you need to do to resolve your issue. Are you willing to do that? See, that's a reaction. We want you to see this is so important, so valuable, so needed, so necessary that you will agree to do it. That's a big thing because that's the most powerful reaction we can get. I will use what I learned from you. See, that's what you want your clients to. You want them to use what they learned from you. See, if they reject it, that's their perception. It's not valuable to them. Anything else here?
Are you
Reaction.
looking for reaction?
Yes, so reaction.
For the government, if they were able to show through these post-counseling interviews that the person did obtain a job, one of their goals was to make sure that they were actually bringing in revenue, and they could do that with good job with taxes. And
Yeah.
that revenue would be coming in back. That would be one of the benefits.
Well, that's down here now. Okay.
You're talking about the reaction of
React.
people getting counseling?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you wanted to say it was helpful, beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a simple reaction. We're going to show you the most powerful ones as we go through the process. the questions.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know, free food.
Yeah. They might not
don't
even
wanna
want,
have to-
they might not even want the counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They may not make a, but want to make a commitment
Mhm.
or do anything for what they're getting.
Yeah. So we have to create this kind of situation where you will at least want to listen to how we can help you. Be willing to. I noticed some things that Rob was putting on the chart was that we don't have an adoption, not enough adoption of the users, not enough people signing on and actually doing it, not enough people using the software, not enough people doing something. See, in their mind, it's not worth it. Something called them to turn it off. So we're trying to understand that. So we put a reaction objective or 2 or 3 so that we all focus on getting that perception. We all focus on getting that person to want to do this. Let's go down to learning for a minute. What is it we need to know? What does the people who are going through the counseling need to learn to make it work? What do you think?
Learn how to find and keep a job.
Yeah. Let's say we got to learn what we have to do to correct my situation.
Yeah, find a solution.
Yeah.
Whatever problem
Right. Learn, what must I do to correct this? Knowing what I have to do. And Sarah actually had that because it was really in the form of a little action plan that they put in place to do that. It says, here's what you need to do to get that job, or how we'll get your son off the addiction, or how we take care of your husband is in jail, how we're going to get him out of jail using the John Howard Society. Or if your husband needs to go to jail, here's what we'll do to say, whatever the situation is. Knowing what to do. It's important, obviously. Critical. But there's another learning, and they'd put into this, and it's obvious in some cases, but not so obvious in others, and that is what got you into this mess, this situation. You see, you don't want to repeat this. You don't want this to happen to you again. Is it what caused you to get to this? Now, for some it's obvious, some is not quite so obvious. So it's just a reminder. Hey, okay, here's what happened, how we could have prevented it, but we're here now. We're trying to make sure that doesn't happen again. And then the big learning is what I got to do to get out. Now, what about level 3? Yeah, go do it. You follow the action plan. We got an action plan, you're following the steps. We check in, we have counseling sessions. When you come get the free food, we see where you are. We're checking off that you're doing this, you're going here, you're getting this done, getting that done. Actions, taking actions. All right, how about what's our impacts coming out of this? You've already hinted at that. I think Terry was talking about that. What are some impacts? If you need a job, what's the impact coming out of this? Got a job. Now,
feel better about yourself.
yeah, you got some intangibles. Self-esteem of the family unit, self-esteem of the individual.
You got money.
Less stress, maybe.
Right, you got income. You
Mo-
have income, you have money.
Yeah, more Friday night beer.
Not going to
Yes. Lot. Now, when you get to, I'm sorry. What?
Paying taxes.
Yeah. See, when we
I
get
get
to,
my paycheck, I'm also paying taxes.
so when we get to converting it to money, to get to ROI, as we get to, you get the impact, we're going to take these steps. We're going to sort out the effects of this, convert data to money. See, we got two sets of values here. One is that they pay taxes now, and that goes into province. Canada is one of those countries that you have to pay taxes. Now, I say that because some countries you don't have to pay taxes, but that's getting fewer and fewer. Now, also, the unemployment benefits you're getting goes away now. So it saves the province some money there. So you're saving money and you're adding revenue with taxes. Those are going to add money. Now, we'll come back to that in just a minute and see what some other impacts that could be coming through this. This is a job impact.
Learning skills.
Well, that's probably might be a step to get to the job. You learn the skills, but now what's another outcome? Suppose you had your husband is in jail and you try to get him out of jail. The outcome is get out of jail. It's that easy. Now, you, this is not, it's not that difficult here. But see, we save money. Do you think we know what it costs to incarcerate a person in jail or in prison? Unfortunately, we know it too well because it's so expensive. So we're saving money again if we can get to the money. Suppose we got someone on addiction, a family member, and the steps we're taking is to get them enrolled in the right program, get them on the path so that we can resolve that addiction. So the impact we're looking for is not addicted anymore. Or at least they're on the path in recovery. Now, is there savings there? Yes. Now, this is Alberta Health Services. Is their health care. It's government-funded health care, but that's a provincial government now. You're avoiding a cost to the government. If you can get that addiction corrected, because the longer that addiction is there, you're going to cost more and more money. So you get the point here. Even Sarah was saying, yes, I got this. Now, let's address a couple of issues here, right at the impact level that we've just talked about. Now, you remember, the first thing after we have an impact, what's the first thing we do?
Follow-up surveys?
The next block is by isolating the effects of the program. You see, all 5 of these blocks have make it credible in front of them. We did that purposely because we're trying to make it credible for the chief financial officer or anyone else. We isolate the effects of a program. Here's where Sarah had a pushback. She said, wait a minute. If I help someone get a job, I'm not the cause of that job. It's probably going to be, was a job there, their skills, their experience. It probably could be nothing related to me. We say, what, do you think that you had an influence? Well, yeah, I think so. Well, we're going to use a technique that we talked about this morning. We'll go to this person, and this person is going to tell us the extent to which you received this job. Think about it. You got the job. Tell us the extent to which this counseling caused that. And let's use a scale of 0 to 100%. And it could be some who said, I never would have got this job without that. That'd be rare. Or someone said, well, I probably would have. But this got me on the way. I'm going to give part of it. You see, all Sarah needs is just part of it. Because if you've got a lot of people a job, if you had 10 people that got jobs, and she was only 10% of the reason for them getting the job, that's equivalent of getting one person a job. See, the point is we've got to get this connection. It's so easy to say, well, there's so many other factors, I'll probably be left in the dust. But all we need is the most credible person, and that's the person who got the job, to tell us in a non-threatening, unbiased way what percent goes to my efforts as a counselor. So it's sorting it out. We'll come back to that later. We sort it out. So we can do that in these because that person knows what other stuff, what other factors, what other issues cause them to get this going. Now, getting to money, I think we just said we've got money here. Almost every one of these we can see money. If you've got money, it adds up to money. Is it hard to get to the cost of the program? Yes. No. Yeah. So, say her program is actually, it's funded by the government through the Catholic Family Services. It's a church, it's a faith-based group there. And so what they do is invoice the Alberta provincial government for their fees, for the counseling. So that's a cost. She says, I got the cost, I invoiced them. We say, well, what about the place where you hold the counseling? That's in the food bank. Is it a room set aside for that? Yes. Who owns the building? The government does. Put that cost in. And any other costs associated from the government perspective, because they're the ones asking for ROI. So put all of the costs. See, what we're doing now is looking at make it credible to include all the costs, direct and indirect. So it's all in there. Direct and indirect. Intangibles. Are there any intangibles here? Yes. Lots of intangibles. Yes. Let's just think. Intangibles are so powerful. Intangibles drive so many programs. And let's just take a quick look at some of the intangibles. Let's go to page 54 in our workbook for a minute. Page 54. Intangibles. In the workbook. 54. You could look at this list and probably find 5 or 6 or more intangibles that probably is connected to this program. Do you see any? Yes. Could be. Yes. Stress. Probably a lot of stress there. So we got lots of possibilities here. And it's as simple as saying, okay, we're going to ask the person, tell us the extent to which this program improved this measure. And you put stress on that list. Now we're looking what we have. I'm going to keep you going back and forth here. Purposely, it's going to drive you nuts, but that's what we want to do. And we go to page 20, page 20 in your application guide. Let's see, 60. Page 20, you see that little chart? This is how we would connect it to the intangible to our program. The first one is not apply, but then you list those 5 or 6 or 7 intangibles, and you're having this person say, tell us the extent to which this program, this counseling, has improved this measure. 1 is no influence, 2 is some influence, 3 is moderate influence, 4 is significant, 5 is very significant. And you'd have to decide, where do they have to check for me to consider we have some influence? You have influence. Is it some, 2, or is it 3, moderate? So you make that decision and you tell your audience. And this is how we connect the intangibles to our program. These are important. It's just that we decided maybe not to convert them to money. And that gives you the 6 type of data. So we can calculate ROI from those cost avoidance or additional taxes added together compared to the cost. And we got our intangibles. We got 6 types of data.